Pokémon Home released a bunch of powerful new Pokémon like Landorus, Urshifu, Ursaluna, etc. When stronger new Pokémon show up, that means older, weaker Pokémon get thrown away. That is the truth of natural selection in the competitive Pokémon universe. Meowscarada was one of the top Pokémon in Regulation A, the first format, but after the additions of Paradox Pokémon, Ruin Pokémon, and Pokémon Home Pokémon, it's nowhere to be seen. Hydreigon was also a top Pokémon in Regulation A who was again nowhere to be seen, although that's mainly because of the introduction of Fluttermane in Regulation B. Palafin, who was a good Pokémon throughout the format, now sees zero usage because Urshifu Rapid is simply better. The point is that when new Pokémon get added, the overall average power level increases and the more generic Pokémon are going to fall off. But that didn't happen to Farigiraf. In fact, with the introduction of Pokémon Home, Farigiraf actually became even more popular. Its usage rate skyrocketed and it's now a top 20 Pokémon with more usage than Pokémon like Dondozo or Tatsugiri. It was even used on the team that finished in second place at the Pokémon World Championship. That's relatively unexpected. You would think an average looking Pokémon would slowly fade away as higher stat Pokémon become more common. But a unique set of circumstances has made Farigiraf a genuinely good Pokémon in the current format, Regulation D, even with all the high base stat legendaries running around. In fact, it could be argued that the reason Farigiraf became better in Regulation D is not in spite of power creep, but because of power creep. Let me explain. Farigiraf is a relatively average Pokémon. Base 520 isn't actually that bad, it's similar to starter Pokémon, but it's being played in a format where everyone is using legendary Pokémon and Paradox Pokémon with base stat totals near 600. It takes a lot for a Pokémon with a base stat of 520 to be usable in that context. But there are some valuable assets in Farigiraf's build. For one, that HP stat of 120 is deceptively large, and because Farigiraf only has 2 weaknesses, it makes Farigiraf tough to one-hit KO. Even versus legendary and Paradox competition, Farigiraf is likely to be able to live at least one attack, if not more, from these types of Pokémon. While its base 90 attack is wasted, 110 special attack is good enough, and a psychic type attack can put a lot of pressure on 3 of the top 5 Pokémon, Urshifu, Iron Hands, and Amoonguss. It also has an immunity to Fluttermane's Shadow Ball, but that's less important. It's an alright Pokémon, but being only alright doesn't cut it. The main selling point for why you would ever use Farigiraf is its ability Armor Tail. Armor Tail is an amazing ability in doubles by blocking all priority from your opponent's side of the field. For example, the team that won the World Championship had 3 forms of priority: Fake Out, Aqua Jet, and Sucker Punch. The most notable priority move in doubles is Fake Out because it immobilizes one of your opponents. Accordingly, one of the most popular moves in Generation 9 is Iron Hands Fake Out, with Iron Hands having a whopping 37% usage. Farigiraf being able to stop that is incredibly important. But Iron Hands has been around since Regulation B, and Farigiraf still wasn't getting a lot of usage back then. There's more to the story. For one, a new Fake Out Pokémon was also introduced, Rillaboom. Fake Out Rillaboom is not as popular as Iron Hands, but it's still a top 10 Pokémon overall with a 25% usage rate. Fake Out is such a menace that you'll often see offensive Pokémon using a Terra Ghost purely for the ability to gain a Fake Out immunity. Farigiraf stopping that implicitly is big, and that means there's 2 Pokémon in the top 10 that Farigiraf can slow down. Additionally, Urshifu Rapid has become a top 2 Pokémon along with Fluttermane. Its attacks can't be blocked by Protect, and because Surging Strikes always gets a critical hit, Intimidate doesn't slow it down either. It is easily one of the best Pokémon in the format, and a lot of the metagame is warped around it. An extremely common core is Qianpao plus Urshifu. They have very obvious synergies together. Sword of Ruin makes Pokémon weaker to Urshifu, and Qianpao's Ice typing matches up well versus the Grass type Pokémon who want to try and stop Urshifu. Just look at the top 10 teams of the World Championship. 7 of them had the Urshifu Qianpao core. Qianpao almost always uses Sucker Punch, and Urshifu Rapid either goes with a Choice Scarf or a moveset with Aqua Jet. The rise in Qianpao is noteworthy because oftentimes its only dark type move is Sucker Punch because Sacred Sword lets it hit other Qianpao and steel types like Heatran. The format as a whole is very filled with priority moves, and being able to block them is valuable. It also has important distinctions from Indeedee. Indeedee's ability sets up Psychic Terrain, which blocks priority moves from being used, but there's 2 drawbacks to that. One is that you can't use your own priority because Psychic Terrain affects everybody. 2 is that Rillaboom can switch in to have its Grassy Terrain override the Psychic Terrain. This wouldn't happen in previous formats. Additionally, moves like Qianpao or Dragonite's Ice Spinner removes terrain anyway. Not having to play games with terrain control is beneficial, and Farigiraf's ability to do that is important. Simply blocking priority, while obviously nice to have, is not usually enough to justify an entire team slot. There's still more to the story. What also makes it valuable is its combination of Trick Room plus Imprison. This works in two ways. One is that Trick Room is a common strategy in the metagame because of Ursaluna, a Pokemon that didn't exist before. With Imprison, you can block Trick Room from ever going up, and most Trick Room Pokemon are Psychic-type Pokemon, so they won't do a lot of damage back to you. Every team has to be prepared for Trick Room, otherwise you'll run into a bad matchup. In previous formats, you could use Amoonguss and call it a day. Amoonguss's low speed and Spore matches up reasonably well versus Trick Room on its own. But that doesn't work versus Ursaluna because Ursaluna's Flame Orb makes it get burnt and therefore immune to Spore. The Trick Room counterplay options that worked in the past don't work anymore, so people needed to find new techniques. All things considered, Farigiraf is a relatively reliable way to control Trick Room teams. It's not foolproof and the rest of your team is important too, but it's a good piece to have. The second way is versus Tailwind. Tornadus Tailwind is also an extremely popular strategy. It's very easy to have a good time with Tailwind Tornadus and stacking the most powerful attackers in the format like Chi-Yu, Golden-Go, Urshifu, etc. Trick Room Farigiraf lets you turn the tables on a team like that. What's important is that Tornadus' Prankster Taunt can't stop Trick Room because of Armor Tail. That's a noticeable advantage over other Trick Room Pokemon like Gothitelle or Cresselia. With an unstoppable Trick Room versus the most common Tailwind archetype, Farigiraf positions itself as good versus both extremes of the speed control spectrum. The key is the flexibility of Farigiraf. You're not committing to an entire Trick Room team. You're only committing to the option of Trick Room if you need it. Speed control is so fundamental to all of Pokemon. If you move faster than your opponent, you're gonna knock them out before they knock you out. It's as simple as that. Speed is the difference between an Empoleon knocking out a Torterra with Ice Beam, or a Torterra knocking out Empoleon with Earthquake. Farigiraf stops priority moves, it tackles opposing Trick Room, and it can handle Tailwind. Being able to control the speed of the game like Farigiraf can is valuable. With so many powerful threats ready to destroy you, the value of making sure that your powerful threats are the ones that are attacking first is what makes Farigiraf a more commonly used Pokemon. Last but not the least, the Urshifu meta inherently benefits Farigiraf. This is more happenstance than Farigiraf benefiting from power creep as a concept. Urshifu Water being one of the best Pokemon in the format means that King Gambit and Ting Lu, both Pokemon who would beat Farigiraf, aren't very common and have dropped off in usage. Also, Urshifu Dark offers a lot of competition for teams that want a Dark type, and ironically, Farigiraf matches up better versus Urshifu Dark than King Gambit or Ting Lu. That's because it commonly runs Terra Fairy with Dazzling Gleam, which is 4 times super effective versus Urshifu Dark. When you add those metagame factors into the mixture too, it's clear why Farigiraf gets used as often as it does. The Pokemon in the metagame happen to be more favorable for it, and its ability to control the speed metagame is invaluable. All that combined is how Farigiraf defied power creep.